What's going on, boys and girls? Sean here. Welcome back to the next video. Today, we got a little video that's been a long time in the making. Today, I want to do a shout out and a tribute to one of my oldest best friends and my brother. Nick passed away some months back, and this is one I've been wanting to make a long time ago. And the reason this one's pertinent is because he was a great drummer and one of my musical mentors growing up. And I'll tell you the story of how we met. But you know, today's his birthday. So I've been wanting to make this video for months now, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I think it's fitting that I make the video today. And, you know, grief is a funny thing because sometimes people die that are family members, or sometimes people die that are friends, very close friends, or so you thought. And sometimes it doesn't affect you the way you thought it would affect you. Sometimes, you know, you've got a lot of grief. Sometimes you just get a little misty eyed and think good thoughts or whatever. So yeah, sometimes you think it's going to affect you heavily and it doesn't. Other times you just get thrown just completely off balance. And this was one of those times when I mean, Nick was one of my oldest friends. We met when I was 15 years old. I had my first band called Infinity, and the drummer was kind of new to drumming, but he had a classmate, and he was quite a few years older than me. He had a classmate in high school who was a great drummer, and he brought him over to kind of just observe and check things out. And that's when I met Nick. He came over and he played Hopper Teacher, and he was a much more advanced musician than any of us were at the time. But he said he saw the seed of talent in me, and he said he took one look at me. I had no shirt on, a bandana around my waist, leather pants, boots, long hair, earring, blonde hair. He said I just looked like a rock star, and I sang great. And, I guess maybe for 15, and eventually that started a friendship and a musical relationship that lasted, 40 years. So eventually, at 17, we went on the road together and did the Southern Circuit, hairband circuit, in like 1988. And that was an interesting experience. So I had my first road experiences, and all of that entails, and all that entails with the road. I had all those first experiences. I turned 18 on the road playing with Mickey at Dirty Harry's in Key West. And the whole band doused me with whipped cream. And these were different days, the 80s. And, the 80s were definitely a different time. You get away with a lot more in bars. You could be a 17 with peach fuzz for a mustache, no beard, nothing, and somehow get away with playing on stage. I turned 18, but as far as the bars were concerned, I turned 21. So, it was different times, but Nick was just always cracking jokes, jovial, always smiling. He liked to party a bit when we were younger. He drank a bit. He did a little bit of this. And, he was kind of a partier. I was never a partier, but he was a good guy. Nobody has any memories of him ever freaking out or getting. He wasn't violent. He was always trying to, talk to people he would calm people down. He was a very calming, pleasant presence in the world. And the world is definitely a much worse place without him. We stayed friends that always used to check in with each other over the years, and we'd always hook up. He lived in Los Angeles for years, and I went and visited him several times. And I lived in California at the time. I lived in Northern California in the 90s. I went and visited him in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and he was just the consummate rock star. He played in all these LA bands back when Strip was a thing, and moved there right after coming off the road in like 1989, 1990. And, he toured with various different bands and played a band called Rowdy, kind of a country social distortion kind of thing. And Temporary Insanity was his like heavy metal band on the Strip for years. And back and forth he came through the 90s and, and into the 2000s to Florida and back. And he would hang out with his mom, always playing music. And when Nancy and I got married, I was actually in film school in Los Angeles at the time, and we thought about moving to Los Angeles. And Nick moved back to Los Angeles with a girlfriend, and we happened to have been there on our honeymoon, or Nancy was out there. She got married in Vegas. We picked him up from the airport with his girlfriend, which didn't last long. We went with him to get a little cute little house in West Hollywood and hung out. We went to, I went to, different places. The Rainbow. He used to know the owner of the Rainbow. And we hung out in Los Angeles, hung out in Vegas, and anywhere I've ever really been besides Alaska. We never went more than a few months, maybe a year without staying in contact. And it was when we were in LA that he was still drinking back then, and he ended up going into a diabetic coma. And luckily, his friend, who was a pharmacist and bandmate, found him just in time, got him got him to the hospital. They saved his life. Suffice it to say, he never drank again after that. Cleaned up his act. He was good, but he was a diabetic for the rest of his life. I mean, he was like the healthiest looking dude I knew. He was skinnier, high school weight, swimming every day. Moved back to Florida, moved in with his mom. He was doing some various things for one of his uncles and doing some handyman work. And, you know, he was just a good guy. He was the guy that I used as a model for someone who actually cleaned up their life, got healthy. And he ate healthy. He was a healthy dude. He was the model. He was the guy that actually was going to make it. He got healthy, and he was down here for years. I knew he went through some challenges with some circulation issues due to diabetes. Even though he was thin, kept his diet low carb, no sugar, obviously no alcohol, anything like that. But he faced challenges, and when I didn't hear from him for like a year, I started to get really nervous. And then I got the phone call a few months back that he passed away, and I was just in suspended disbelief. I just couldn't believe it. And then after a while, I talked to his mother, and he was one of those guys who never really wanted to bother anybody else with his problems, and he never wanted to let people know he was going through things. And I mean, I guess he had his reasons. I just wish he would have called me and let me know what was going on. Apparently, he had some challenges and ended up having some type of a stroke a couple years ago, lost his ability to walk, and didn't want to tell anybody, any of his oldest friends, either myself or Troy, his two oldest friends from his band. They didn't want to tell anybody. And so he didn't reach out to anybody. And I guess he did finally get the ability to walk again, but with a limp. And a couple of my other friends did see him. I spoke to him around May 2022 when I was moving out of my place to move into my bus. He didn't let on anything. Apparently, he had already been going through all that stuff. And I guess he was in and out of the hospital. And his mother, I talked to his mother. Either way, for whatever reason, he ended up back in the hospital. And I think through negligence, and they were feeding him sugar food, all sorts of stuff. He ended up with a grand mal seizure and just never came out of it. So he passed away. He was one of the greatest guys. And today's his birthday, so this is a fitting day to pay tribute to one of my oldest friends and my best friends. And And he's just a great guy and a great drummer, and one of the first people who actually believed in me as a musician. And he was one of my biggest fans. He was there when I was recording a lot of things. He'd be in the studio with me when I was recording vocals on my first album, and there's almost every musical memory I have. He was somehow involved in the process. I know I'll see him again. I have faith in God. I believe there's an afterlife. I believe in heaven. But you know, grief is just a weird thing. It's a weird thing. So this one has continued to hit me hard. It hit me hard in the beginning. It hit me hard this morning. So I would encourage you guys to stay in contact with the people in your life who hold a lot of memories and you've shared a lot of time with. Keep in contact with them, whether they're family or friends or band members, people like that, because you never know when the last time you're going to speak to somebody is going to be. And there's going to be very important, impactful people in your life that one day, you're never going to be able to get to speak to again. So, you know, make sure you tell them you love them. I love that, man. People and great friends who will be there for you thick and thin are the most important resource and the most important things you're ever going to have in your life. Your cars, your musical instruments, your houses, your material possessions are bullshit. They're meaningless. People are what matters, you know. So make sure you cultivate those relationships and keep them up, you know, because that's what's important. So I just want to put a tribute out to Vic. God rest your soul, brother. You are immeasurably missed. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for letting me rant.